I can't say that I've ever been a fan of any human being hurting any other human being. I can't say that that's ever been a thing that I've been fond of at all. That said, I want to talk today on the subject of soldiers killing soldiers on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Friday, the 18th of February. That's a hard word to say. Of 2022. Thank you for everyone, but welcome and thank you for everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. It's Kurt's Religion and Politics on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Minds, minds.com, the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, on Parler, on Gab, or wherever else you happen to be catching me today. Thanks for coming along. The subject for today is soldiers killing soldiers, and I'm going to do what I normally do, which is to go through my notes very quickly to kind of give you an idea, to sort of set the stage, if you will, for what it is that I'm going to say. I freely acknowledge that I'm in a place that even most Christians count untenable. I am a pacifist. I came to the conclusion that I had zero right to kill others back in my days in the Air Force. That was a large part of the reason I left. That said, I wanted to take a moment to discuss a line from a well-known comic. Essentially, the line is, how does soldiers killing soldiers solve the world's problems? This was asked by a son of his father, and the father seemed to have no answer. Let me help you out. Imagine you have a house. In your house is your family. You live as a family, as you see fit and appropriate within the laws of the society in which resides your little domicile. But you have a neighbor, and he has decided you should live according to his rules, according to his decisions. Part of his way of looking at things includes walking into your house at will and taking whatever suits his fancy. Though less likely, he also maintains that he can dispatch any member of your household for any reason. Most folks would not be pleased to be under such an arrangement. I certainly wouldn't, and I doubt you would. What about when this happens to two neighboring countries? Country A, say Turkey, decides country B, for example Armenia, should be subjugated and the people thereof should be dealt with as the leadership and military of country A deems reasonable and appropriate. So maybe subject to genocide. You may be aware that what I'm suggesting here has already occurred. If you're not, welcome to reality. That's where it is. It's actually happened. This is one of many examples of such things. In fact, even the United States had such a situation in place. Granted, not nearly as bad as has been the case elsewhere. The British Crown, though, wanted the U.S., what at the time was viewed as colonies of Great Britain, to continue in its position as a part of the British Commonwealth. The people of this country, at least a good percentage of them, it's arguable how many, felt like they were being taxed without being represented, without representation. The citizenry used what armaments they could to drive off, granted with the aid of others like the French and others, the representatives of the crown. Were it not for doing so, they would have been under that entity and things wouldn't have gotten any better, or so it is argued. Don't believe me? Look at what happened and is in some measure still happening between Turkey and Armenia. Wonder how soldiers killing soldiers solves the world's problems? Take a gander at history and even at this very day, right now. Literally, we have a situation that's been brewing for some time now in which Russia has been amassing troops on its border with Ukraine. I want to say something as an aside here that most people probably don't care about. Ukrainian people typically don't like the expression, the Ukraine. The Ukraine implies it's a region, not a nation, and they don't like that. Nah, it's maybe not universal. And there may be even those who like the term the Ukraine better than Ukraine. But the point is, there is disagreement on that fact because Ukrainians like to think of themselves as sovereign, right? They like to think of their country as sovereign. But right now, the point is there is an amassing number of troops on the Ukrainian border, and NATO and others are saying to the Russians who are trying to say we're drawing down, they're trying to say to them, no, you're not. We can watch, we can see, we know what you're doing, you're not drawing down. You can argue all you want that having troops amassed on the Ukraine side of that border, right, the Ukrainian side of the border, is going to cause problems, and you're probably right. But the question is, will there be a virtually non-violent takeover of Ukraine by Russia, who has for some time deemed that territory a part of their landmass, a part of who they are? Or will Ukrainian people fight back and say, you can't have us, we're our own sovereign nation? And if Russia decides it's going to take over Ukraine, will then the people of Ukraine be subject to the whims and fancies of the Russians? That is to say, not in charge of their own government anymore. And this is something that's happening with China and Taiwan. And this is something that in some sense happened with China and Hong Kong. To be fair with China and Hong Kong, the situation was different. China actually leased Hong Kong to the British. The lease expired and the Chinese took over that area again. So technically it was considered to be part of China all along that was just being leased to the British. Okay? There are other instances where similar things are occurring. But those are some of the most notable. North Korea swears up and down it owns the entire peninsula, the entire Korean peninsula. South Korea, to some degree, probably says the same thing. Okay? There have been many instances where people have said this is traditionally a land of our people and have tried to take that land from the people who live there who claim themselves to be autonomous. The point of all of this is simple. You can have soldiers battling it out with other soldiers so that people can keep their autonomy, not be ruled over by someone else, or not. But the chances are really good if, say, for example, Russia were to get into Ukraine. When people in Ukraine started to fight against what Russia was doing there, Russia would not be killing soldiers, it would be killing civilians. The point of all of this is really, really simple. When you ask, how does their soldiers killing those people's soldiers improve the world or make the world a better place? The answer is, it makes it so that places that are sovereign nations can remain so. And again, I cite the example of your house and the fact that you don't just give it up to your neighbors when they decide that they want it. You find ways to fight for it and keep it. And the same thing applies to soldiers, to armies, navies, air forces, Marine Corps, whatever they happen to be, Coast Guards, doing what they do. They do what they do in order to protect the people who are in those regions. And the idea that there are soldiers doing that means that you have people who are equipped for that purpose. Now again, from my perspective, I'm pacifist. If you're going to take over, I guess you're going to take over. That does not mean that I do not believe, for example, the United States has a right to protect its borders, to protect itself as a country, to have an army, to have a navy, to have an air force, to have a Marine Corps, to have a Coast Guard, to have whatever facility it thinks is reasonable, reserves and National Guardsmen for those purposes. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm simply telling you that I'm a pacifist and therefore I'm not really a part of that. What does soldiers killing soldiers help? Well, it makes it so that places can actually be what they're intended to be as opposed to being what somebody else decides they'll be. Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Friday, the 18th of February of 2022. That means tomorrow will be Saturday, the 19th of February of 2022. Keep in mind, today at sundown is the beginning of that Sabbath for those who observe it, and tomorrow at sundown is the ending of it. Thank you for everyone who's... that's fine. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloutHub, on my Facebook page, on Kurt's Religion and Politics.local.com, on minds.com, the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there. Facebook page, by the way, I have a Kurt's Religion and Politics page, or a Religion and Politics page there. Everyone who's here on Parler and on Gab, thank you for coming along as well. Remember that Rumble is my preferred platform. You can give me a boxing glove or a rumble on Rumble if you want to do that. You can of course subscribe anywhere. You're allowed to do that as well. You can give me a like or a dislike on any platform where that's possible. You can comment on my content if you choose to do that, and I will try to pay attention to that. Again, I'll delete it if I feel that you're spamming me in some way. On the other hand, even if it's something that I don't feel like I have to answer, or I feel like is more pointed towards the outside, I'll probably leave it there if you put it there. If it's not some sort of spam, if I feel it's reasonable, I will reply to your comment on whatever I put out there. Subject for today has been soldiers killing soldiers. Don't have tomorrow's subject on my list. Let me take a look and see what that is, if I can figure out how to do that quickly. Tomorrow we are going to talk about bleed over, and it has to do with people who are parents and get to the point where they don't have children anymore, and that there's that sort of bleed over in perspective into doing things like having critters, dogs and cats and so forth. And other things. There are other instances as well that I may try to talk about also. But I did want to wish you a good day today and hope that everything is going well for you. I hope that things are going well this year, obviously, continuing to go well this year. And I'm hoping also that I will see you again on Saturday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Friday, the 18th of February of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.